Oops, sorry, let me go back there. Slide 1. There we go. So you can all see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the next screen is the important one, in theory, because it's going to tell you, well, it would be if it would. Come on, you can do this. It decides it doesn't want to do it. There we go. So, we're recording the session because I'm going to send you the recording afterwards. And that's because I do lots and lots and lots of fast talking to go through the slides quite quickly. But then you can have the video and the presentation afterwards and go through it in your own time if you want to catch up on anything. So don't be worried that we don't stay for a long time on any one slide because you'll get the whole copy of the slide and all the notes and everything with it later. Please do interrupt, particularly as there are only 3 of you. At any time during the presentation, we can stop and go into what you want to do. But if you make a note of what you want to ask in the chat session, then that means I have a record of it afterwards. And if we run out of time, I can send you the answers anyway. So those are sort of the rules of the day. And this is what we're going to cover today. So you do need to get some proper licenses for Parish Online to work at the best level of detail. So I'll show you about those and how you go and get them. They're all free, by the way, so no problem there. Then we're going to show you how Parish Online works and what it can do. Then we'll talk about base maps and layers and what they are and how they work together. And then we'll show you how to use them. And then we're going to do it yourself so that you get the chance to create a layer, add in a feature or two, see how you do it for yourself. And then we'll just round everything off and polish it off. So hopefully that's what everyone is looking forward to doing. So the first thing that you need is we want to operate at the best level of detail that the system gives us. Now you're operating on the Ordnance Survey's digital map of the UK, which has absolutely incredible detail. But to get the incredible detail, you need to have a public sector geospatial agreement license, which is free for you, and you just need to log in and get it, and we'll show you how to do that in a moment. But getting the PSGA means, if you're looking in this right-hand picture, you're going to go from this little detail to that. So you can get down to every single house and every single house number and name and that sort of thing. The same way for the aerial photography, getting hold of your PSGA number automatically will let you able to register for the APGP. In the same token, looking on this right-hand side, you can go from this sort of detail to that. So much sharper, much clearer, and we'll show you later why things like shadows are really, really useful to have. So getting the PSGA number, when you enter it in, you then get able to have the highest definition maps that the Ordnance Survey produces. And this is how you're going to get your PSGA number if you don't want to have already. So in Parish Online, up in the top right-hand corner up here, is something called the cogwheel. And if you click on it, then it drops down this little mini menu and you can select the help and support layer. And that takes you into the support center where you have the ability to enter whatever you're searching for here. If you type in PSGA, up comes this lot of drop downs, and you just click on the PSGA number. It takes you through the steps of applying for your PSGA number. It's really quite quick. I mean, they give you one of these standard bureaucratic answers that you'll get your answer in maybe the next 5 days, but usually it's through in about 5 minutes. It's very good. It's very good indeed. So that's the PSGA number. That once you've got that, what can you do with it in Parish Online? So it's a digital mapping system, as you can see from the picture on the right. And the way that works is that you approach it through your browser and you don't need anything else. Everything is running up in the cloud. So it's a straightforward piece of software for you. It's just your browser and a reasonable internet connection. And everything is kept securely and safely for you. It's also easy to get help. There's all sorts of help. We've talked briefly about the knowledge base, which is that business of clicking on the cogwheel and choosing help and support. but there's a monthly newsletter. March's came out today. You can always get email support. There's a user group, which I'll tell you about, and there's the sort of training that you're doing now. So lots of ways of getting information to run Parish Online. Now, why should you use maps in the first place? Well, this is what I like to introduce as location-based data. So on a map, you have features, points, what you're seeing here. Click on any one of these points and up will come the data record for that point. So the data that you're looking at depends upon entirely the place of you clicked on the map. So location-based data. And putting this everything into a map makes people much more aware of what it is that you're talking about. So once you've got your system, this is what you can use it for. So we were talking about grass mowing. You wanted to know about that, Ramon. So there's your stuff for contracts management. I think we'd had Sarah doing neighborhood plans several years ago, or rather the system doing it. But all these other options are all part of what councils all across the country are using for using Parish Online for. And there's about 1,800 councils using the system. So I like to think of this as moving your parish council out of the filing cabinet onto the digital world, because once it's up on the sort of in the cloud, anybody can look at it. Anyone from your council is entitled to a free account. It doesn't cost them anything once you've got your Parish Online. If you change parish clerks from one year to the other, it's quite easy to transition if everything's digitally visible. And it's very handy for anyone to be able to see at any time of day or night if the parish clerk happens to have gone off to Mallorca with the filing cabinet key in her pocket. It doesn't matter, you can still get at your system. So I think there's a lot to be said for going online. And you can create your own maps in here. That's what we're going to do later this afternoon. So you'll come away from today's session confident that you can do anything. Tremendous. You can, having produced the maps or just looking at them, you can then print them out and produce them for anyone else to see. So if someone calls you and says, can you tell me of a footpath I can push grandma safely around in her wheelchair, you can print that out and email it to them. Or you can even print it out on a printer and give it to them if they happen to come into your office. So also it's very convenient for outputting information. And you get sources of data from all over the place. Now, we'll be looking at the layers of data in a minute, but suffice it for me to say at this stage, there's hundreds of them, literally hundreds of layers of data which you can use. So lots of them are coming from these third-party organizations, some of which belong to the government and some don't, but they all provide data for us to use. And in the best run counties, you can get your local authority information. So that's why I was talking, Ramon, to you about district council data, county council data, or if you're in a unitary data, can all be exported into Parish Online so that you see exactly what the district or county council has available. And that's really, really helpful, particularly when it comes to footpaths. So I'm thinking COVID here, people are making much more use of footpaths than they used to. And the demand on parish clerks to come up with some sort of footpath map has increased. And this is where the system really comes into its own.
Yep.
So,
Graham, can I just ask a quick question? Would that look like Parish Online? Because our unitary authority, Cheshire West, has got what they call the Cheshire West and Chester Council definitive map. It looks very similar to Parish Online, but it's not quite the same thing. Would it be the same thing? Or?
Well, here's the beauty of it, Sarah. All big councils, districts and counties and unitaries, they all use some form of what's called a geographic information system. And Parish Online is a geographic information system, and they can all exchange data. So I'll get into it towards the end, but the answer to your question is yes, it's very similar, and B, it's a piece of cake for them to get the data from them to you inside Parish Online. So you've got sort of one size fits all, if you like.
Thank you.
But we will go into that later on. So other people, this is what they've done with Parish Online. And I just zoom through these because most of you will know that it's just handy to know that someone has done neighborhood planning. In fact, neighborhood planning is usually the reason that people buy Parish Online in the first place. And examples of this at work, you know, you can start off with a standard digital map here, and then you start adding bits, you know, that we're going to do planning in this gap, and then we're going to do some bit more housing there, and we'll have some brownfield sites, whatever they're going to be. And then you can start plotting visibility, you know, skyline views, what people want to be able to see once they've got a sort of 10-story building in front of them, what happened to their air rights and that sort of thing. All that can be put onto a map and really usefully studied. So asset management is a huge topic. We actually do a training session just entirely devoted to asset management, but really useful, very helpful. And you look at this example here for Chelsea. They've got all these benches and beachside fittings that they have to maintain and take care of, and they're all subjected to the sea, salt and weather and so forth. And clearly they've got all of their items mapped, and they can click on any one of these and find out what the state of it is, when it was last varnished, when it was last maintained, what it looks like in a photograph, all that sort of stuff. Really handy. And then when you're explaining to people, you know, where is stuff, what does it look like? You can give a photograph in the system, you can put data into the system. It all becomes much clearer once it's visually there on the map. Gritting routes are really important in the winter, even in this moderate, temperate, beautiful country. And you can have your salt bins plotted, and you know, you can tell when they're sort of down to 50% or 20% and they need refilling. You can just tell the local council, and they will have a map reference which you can give them, and they know exactly where to come. They don't spend time looking for it. Cemetery management was very important at the start of COVID because the government suddenly realized it had no idea if there was enough space in the country's cemeteries to put all the bodies that might have come out of the pandemic. We did an exercise in Parish Online, and the answer very soon came out that there's plenty of room. So that removed that headache, but it's very useful for that sort of information. And then planning applications are possibly the biggest thing that councils do with this. So you can take what looks to be an innocuous looking planning application, and then by the time you've thrown in listed buildings and ancient woodlands and flood risks and so forth, you might suddenly decide it's the most inapplicable planning application you've ever seen. But you wouldn't have known that if you hadn't had the data readily to hand and visualized like this. So you can publish the planning application. So what you do in Parish Online is directly publishable to your local village website. We do a planning system, a training session on that. But in my opinion, the public map part of Parish Online is arguably its most useful point. Absolutely brilliant. Once you publish to your village website, then any changes you make inside Parish Online after that automatically get updated to the published map version. So very handy for everyone in the village or your parish to see what's going on with planning applications. It's all right there for everyone to share. And then Nether Story uses Parish Online to generate the maps in their leaflet, just like we all can do if we're looking to get more tourists coming around. And finally, the case studies are all kept on the Parish Online website underneath a tab, which is very cunningly called Case Studies. And if you go in there, you come up with all these choices. You can either show all of them, or you can go into it, whichever topic happens to be interesting you at the time. But then you get a case study of somebody else who's actually done this ahead of you. And the beauty of the case studies, in my opinion, is that they show you step by step what you have to do to get the results that these people got. So it's not just what they've done, but it's also how they did it. And there's lots of case studies here. So the chances are pretty strong that you'll find what you want to do. So that was showing you the sorts of things that you can do. in Parish Online. Now we're going to take a look and see how you actually do it and what goes to make it up inside the system. So we touched a little earlier on, this is a geographical information system. It's very much compatible with what the big guys have. And the data flow, it can be two-way. The people who really know what's going on the footpaths is not the county council, it's the guys down in the parishes who are actually walking around in their wellies. So when you get a really enthusiastic group of IT people up in the council, they will let you update their map of the footpaths on the grounds that you know what's going on rather more than they do. So it's all digitized. And it all works on layers, which is very much like if you think of the old days when you had these overhead projectors, you'd put one layer of acetate on to project on the picture, and then you take out your magic marker or your felt tip pen and you'd write on it, or you'd do fancy diagrams, or you'd overlay a different colored layer and you start building up more and more complicated pictures. Well, this is exactly the same system, but it's a bit more digitized. So, sources, we come from all over the place. We were showing you earlier, all those layers of information are the sources of data. And when you put them together, they give you a much better picture of what's going on around you. So you can switch the layers in and out, on and off, as you wish to get the particular focus that you're looking for. And again, we're going to cover all this shortly afterwards. Then each layer has its own information stored within objects. Again, we talked about that location-based data, and you can create your own layers to cover anything that you wish. So the beauty of this is that all the third-party layers, they provide the data and you can't touch it, but you can use it. In your own layers, you can create shapes, people, pictures, whatever you like, exactly to your own design. And if you don't like what you've done, you just rub it out and start again. It's very, very flexible. So each layer is either going to be a set of points, things like bus shelters, grit bins, that sort of thing, a set of lines, which might be footpaths or boundaries around a field, or everything else, which are polygons. So buildings, shapes, fields, are all polygons. And when you build layers in Parish Online, each layer can only have one of these geometries, they're called. So you only have one type of geometry on each layer. So if you're trying to depict information that contains both points and lines, then you just do one layer for each and demonstrate them both at the same time. It becomes very simple. It becomes very second nature. So a few tips to people before they're getting started. It is a lot faster and easier to use a map. I'm sorry for those of you who are just wedded to trackpads. They tend to be Apple people, but it is easier with a mouse. Stick with the mainline browsers. So Internet Explorer is past it, is obsolete. Don't use it, certainly not for Parish Online. And in case you hadn't really guessed, I'm a user of Opera. That's largely because I'm switching from one platform to another, and it runs exactly the same in all of them. Very, very convenient. Try using all of your screen when you're using Parish Online, and then you don't miss anything. So let's go into properly how we do things. So when you open up, this is what you see. The system always opens up on your parish. So in this case, you're going to see everything centered around Long Sutton in Somerset, where I am. But for you, it'll open up wherever you are. However, you've got the entire UK to play with. Just because this is where it started doesn't mean to say you can't travel anywhere in the country that you wish. So it's just like any other Google Maps or something you've played with. If you want to zoom in a bit, you click on the plus sign, zoom out with the minus. If you want to scroll left or scroll right, then you just do so. This is, on the right-hand side, the Ordnance Survey's digital map of the UK. On the left-hand side, you've got a column which changes as we go and do things. So at the moment, it's showing the collections of layers of data. So each one of these bars is a collection. And if you click on the little green arrow underneath, there are all sorts of layers available under that. So none of these layers is turned on at the moment. You can't see any ticks that show up when you have got a layer turned on. So moving on to the next screen. I just now got what 4 or 5 slides which just show you the range of scales that are available to you just by using your plus or your minus button or rolling the mouse wheel if you have one. So scrolling right out, here's how you can get the entire country. And you can then just select any point and click on the plus sign and away you go coming in. Now you might want to keep your eye on the scale down the bottom here. So this little show bit down here is measuring 200 kilometers in that 1.5 inches or whatever this is. And that will change as we go through. So you're on the 200 kilometer scale here. Now we've come right back down to the 10 kilometer scale, and you start seeing, you know, all the major roads and all the major towns and so forth. And this is more or less sort of county size picture that you're seeing here. Then we're moving into more or less the village scale, and we're down to the, what is it now, the 500 meter scale. So you're beginning to see the names of houses, the names of particular parts of the country, certainly road letters and numbers you're seeing. And then we start getting into the nitty gritty, and you get the details of almost more information that you can manage. So you see that the name of every house, and there are ways of getting the address for every house, which we'll touch on in a second. But we haven't even finished scrolling in yet. There's another couple of places to go. So this is looking at a particular house in a particular farm, and you can scroll down to another level, and now you're looking at one particular corner of the building. So you can see the opportunity for entering all sorts of really tiny information is extremely easy. And then the beauty of this is it all aggregates upwards, so that anybody who's looking at this from the sort of the 40,000 foot viewpoint, if they drill down, they will see the same little ant that you've just busy captured crawling across your screen. And I'm sure you've all seen on these science fiction films or James Bond films or whatever, that you can zoom in from the satellite and you're looking at sort of one corner of the United States, and then suddenly you're going down to the state level, and then the city level, and then you go down to the house level, and finally you're looking at the picture of the swimming pool or whatever it happens to be, all zooming in and out with digital mapping. That's what we're doing here. So we've mentioned layers all the time. What are these layers? So in this screen that you start with, there's a whole bunch of green collections at the top, and then the brown ones, or they call them beige, at the bottom. And basically, the green ones are the base maps that you're going to be using, and we'll talk about that in a second. And then the beige ones are all the third-party layers that you're going to bring in, except for the first two, the parish layers and the asset register, belong to you. So to show you what we're doing, I'm now going to sort of click on this little green arrow here, and you can just see that by clicking on it anywhere in this, in any layer, you toggle them on or off. It's just one click to toggle on and one toggle off. So the only layer toggled on at the moment is the one with the tick mark. Nothing else is showing. You just got the basic digital map. But if I go to change things here, you've seen I've gone from the premium stack standard, I've turned that off, and I've turned the grayscale on. And this is really just to show you the variation. So you get a much paler picture, far less colorful detail, much better sometimes for showing up instances where you want to focus on a detail. You don't want people to be distracted by other items of information. You can just knock it out with a grayscale. If you still happen to know anybody who's using a dot matrix printer, then you can go down to the black and white scale, where there's nothing that cannot be represented by a black and white printer. So what we're doing now, just to show you how things work, is we've got two things toggled on at once. We've gone back to the base layer of the digital map, which you can recognize the underlying stuff, but then there's this sort of faded stuff coming in, which is I've turned on the aerial photography. And what I'm going to do now is to click, or actually right click in this layer up here to show you what's happening. So notice that by right-clicking in here, I get the tick turning to a cogwheel, and then up comes this little device that is in fact a slider. And what it controls is the amount of transparency available to you for the underlying base map. So at the moment, what you're seeing is 60% base map and 40% photography. And it's not particularly clear, but if we now click this and slide it down to 0, you can see the photography is very, very detailed, but there are times when you want some of the map information there to help you identify things. So people don't always recognize their own villages when they see them from above for the first time. But if you have the map on as well, that can help them. And it's nice to know that you can vary the amount of map detail that shows through just by moving this slider up towards 100%. So when it's at 100%, you've got full map and no photograph. And anywhere in between, you've got the balance of the two. And it's just a matter of you moving this until you've got the level that suits you for whatever action you're going to be doing. So I'm now going to toggle off the photography so we can go back to the standard map. And when we do that, you sometimes, just occasionally, will just get a completely white screen. And this seems to be some sort of confusion in the system, but it's simple to get around. Just click on the refresh icon up here, and you'll come back to your main screen. Comme ça. Now we're going to show you putting on some of the beige layers. So what we've talked about is the green base map layers and the photography. Now you bring in layers on any topic you want. And just for today's example, I'm going to say, suppose we're interested in flooding. You can click on this little magnifying glass up here and type in the word flood, which I'm doing for you in this picture. And flood has reduced the number of layers that have got flood information to you down to 3. And if we click on the Environment Agency down here, which is, remember, you're clicking on a collection of layers here, and now I'm opening up the collection. And so you suddenly see there's all these layers available to you of information to do with flooding. Now, as it happens, we're in the middle here of the Somerset levels, which means that much of what we're doing is underneath sea level. It's below than sea level, a bit like Dead Sea, really. And it's interesting to know what happens when it rains here. So keep an eye on this map here, and I'm going to turn on the flooding for a zone 3 flood. What happens when we have reasonable rainfall? And bang, you got water everywhere. So you can see how useful this is for a planning application. Someone says, I want to build right here. You can say, you sure you want to be underwater for 3 months of every year? So turn off search where you've got the information you want by clicking on the X, and you go back to where you were before. So just a quick summary of what we've done so far. We've selected maps, we've selected photographs, we've selected third-party beige layers. We selected those by sorting on the word flood in this case. So now what can we do with all that? Visualization. Well, to do the visualization, I'm going to show you a layer that we've created here in Long Sutton. Now in the red area here is where we planted some of the 50 trees that we got given by the tree charter people. And one of their conditions for giving you 50 free trees was that you kept track of where you'd put them and how they were doing. And we agreed to do that in the mapping system. So click on the red layer, and because this is location-based data, it will pop up on the left-hand side with the data for this particular record. So you can see your columns of data here have changed. Your columns of layers have changed into the data record for this particular item. You know it's the data record for this item because it's been surrounded in a blue boundary. So now you know which one we're talking about. And notice that we've got 5 attachments on this record. You can see the attachments by clicking on this plus sign, bang, and here they are. And to open any one of them, you just click on it and bang. Now, all of a sudden, your picture of 50 trees has become reality, and that you can see we've planted the trees. They've each got their little tube to protect it. They've each got a stake to hold it upright. You can guarantee that we're here because look, everything's flooded. just because it rained yesterday. And basically, this is how things were back in 2020 when we were given the trees. So you take a photograph every year and you can just follow the growth of everything. And that covers almost anything that you're doing. So I would suggest that you want to get your people to get into the habit of doing before and after pictures, so that when they're doing maintenance or they're painting something, you can see what it looked like before they did it. You can see what they look like after they did it. And it's a track record, so that when someone challenges whether you've really been spending the money on paint that you say you've been spending, you can show them, lo and behold, we've been doing the painting. So lots of uses for Parish Online. All right. So let's go and start creating some layers and features. I'm going to show you how it's done to begin with, and then you get to do it. So we touched briefly on the fact that you cannot add data to any third party. So everything below the parish layer and to some extent the asset register you'll find that the system doesn't give you the chance to add any data or make any changes to it. You're just using other people's data. But in parish layers, you can create whatever you like. It's your parish, and whatever you want to play with, you can create. So like every other collection, there's a drop-down little arrow here. When you click there may be something showing up, or there may not. It all depends whether anyone's done anything before you or whether you're operating on a brand new copy of Parish Online. But you need to think about, what are we going to create and why, because that may determine what data we want to collect for this particular feature. So we're going to discuss that. So this is where you're about to start, hopefully, playing with it. I hope you've all got user access with at least editor rights. Probably you're all parish clerks, you've got administrator rights, which is perfect. I hope you all know how to switch from one screen to another, because you'll be looking at what I'm saying to do in the Zoom screen, and then you'll need to go to the Parish Online screen to actually do it. So depending on how you're looking at Zoom, if you're looking at it in the Zoom app, then you're going to have two windows on your computer. One is the Zoom app and one is the browser. And to jump between the two, you can just use Alt-Tab. Or if you're doing everything in the browser, then you can jump between the tabs in your browser by doing Control and then followed by a number. So let's suppose you've got two tabs open. One is the browser, one is your Zoom and one is your Parish Online. Starting from the left is number 1, going up to number 9. So you can have 9 tabs available. You can just jump between any of them by doing Control 1, Control 10, Control 8 will take you to the 8th one. And so you can just jump backwards and forwards that way. So hopefully that will help you. But do by all means say if you're having trouble or I'm going too quickly or this is not working for you. So what we're going to do is create a layer. And so we can find it later and get rid of it. I suggest you call it, when it asks you for a title, just give it your name and the word test. So the type you're going to use, again, it's entirely up to you. I'm suggesting a polygon, but you can be any of the others. It doesn't matter. We'll go into why you want to make a description, and it will ask you to create a column of data. Think of spreadsheets, rows and columns of data. You're going to be creating the columns, and we're going to create 3 today. And I'm going to call them name, date, and status. And there'll be 2 types there. So the name column will be text, the date column will be a date, and the status column will be also a text, but it's going to have some allowed values in it, which you'll enjoy when you see them. And the allowed values that we're going to create today are not yet started, under construction, and finished. So in my mind's eye, we're going to be drawing a new building, in my case, a pavilion on the playground, the recreation ground, but you can do whatever you wish. So that's what we're going to be doing. Now let's see how you go about doing it. So now you want to switch to your Parish Online screen. Go up to the Create menu on the top row, click on that, and you'll be given the option of clicking on New Layer. So do please select New Layer. And you should then get a screen which says create a new layer, enter the layer title. Now, if you look at the column of your left-hand side, all the layers, what you type into this layer title, it's got to fit into that space. So it needs to be fairly short. So the title is a short title, and then you'll get given the opportunity to put in a much longer description that gives you the chance to explain what you're doing. So right now, you'll see if you look at my screen that I just got Graham Test as the title. And then you click on next. And then you get asked to select a geometry type. It's entirely up to you, but I've selected polygon. And then it says set your layers description. You've got 500 characters. Now, the reason for this here is that when you come back to this in 6 months' time and it says Sarah test or something, you got no idea what Sarah test was. But when you look at the description, you can see, oh, yes, we did this during the planning application or the training session or whatever. And we can get rid of it now. But because you've got the chance, this is where you put the blur that tells you what it is you're doing and why. You don't have to put anything. You can leave it completely blank. But the whole point of it is really to explain to yourself in a year's time when you come back and look at it, this is why it's here. When you've done that, click on next. And you should be on the bit now that asks you to add columns to your layer, to add data. And on the top right, there's a plus sign. So you click on the plus and up will pop a new column with the word name in it. And that's automatically called name. It's automatically a text type. And that's just what you need. So that's fine. Go ahead and click on the plus sign again, top right, and create another one. And you'll note it also calls it name and text. And the red word or red sentence comes up saying column names must be unique. So you can't have two names. You don't have to have any column called a name, but you've got to have every name must be unique. So we're going to change this second name, and we wanted this to be the date. So just move your mouse to the second name and overtype it and type in date, or delete it and type in date instead. And then move to the middle column where it says text, click on the down arrow and select date instead. So you should end up with the first column called name text, and the second column is now called date. Click on the plus sign again to get the third and last column. And again, you want to overtype this and call it, change the word name to status, leave it as a text type, but this time you're going to put in the 3 allowed values. So click on the add plus in that third row, please. Not the big plus top right, but the add plus in the third row. And you'll get, if you click on that, you'll get add allowed values screen. And this is where we type in 3 values. The first one was going to be not yet started. So where it says add a value, just type in not yet started. And when you're happy with that, click on the add word on the top right and get a second one. That's where you're going to type under construction. When you've done that, click on the add again and create a third allowed value called finished. And when you're happy with all that, you can either click on confirm, or you can come back to my screen and see that what you've got looks something like what I've got. This is the point where I say to you, it doesn't really matter if you've got it wrong, because it's extremely easy to correct things in Parish Online. So for people just getting started who are all worried about hitting the wrong button, don't fret. Anything you do is easily fixed. So if you're happy with everything now, click on confirm, and you'll come back with a screen that should look just like mine, if you get a chance to look at mine. But all it's saying basically is you've got 3 columns, name, date, and status, and they are text, date, and text. And the bottom one has 3 items in the allowed values column. So if you're happy with that, click on the green finish button. And the system will take you back to the main screen you started from in the first place. And you will wonder what on earth happened to this layer you've just created. Well, it'll be in the group of the collection of layers called parish layer. And depending on how many you had there beforehand, it may not be immediately visible because the system always adds the latest layer to the bottom. So if you can't see Sarah test or a moon test in your parish layers, just scroll down until you find them. And if you don't find them, let me know. If you do find them, then you're going to want to make a change to the system, because I want to make one of the columns required. And the reason for that is very straightforward, that it is possible in Parish Online to create a new record, forget to put anything in the column fields, and then you save it, and you can never find it again because it hasn't got any data in it. So what I'm teaching everyone to do by default is to make one of the fields required, which means you cannot create the record until you put something into the data fields. So to show you how to do that, we're now going to go up and amend the layer that you've just created. So the simplest way to do that is to go up to the cogwheel, top right-hand corner of your screen, click on the cogwheel, and down will drop a little mini menu, and you want to select the first one called Administration. Just click on that. And your screen may change to something that's almost empty, but it will, after a second or two, add up the layers as they come down from the cloud. So you should end up with something in the middle column, which will be your parish layers, and one of them will be called the test layer that you've just created. So what you want to do is to find the test layer, click on it once to select it, then move up to the right-hand side where there's a tab called General and a tab called Columns, and click on Columns. And you'll see that you then got your three columns called Name, Date, and Status. The first two selections of Search and Query have been filled in for you by the system, and you want to make the name column required. So all you're going to do is click in the required box opposite the name row. So I hope that's straightforward, but it's on my screen if it isn't. So you're just going to put a click in the required box opposite name. Do that, and it will pop up and show you it's ticked. So you should now have a screen that's looking a bit like mine if you wanted to check to see what it's supposed to look like. And you'll notice that in the top right-hand corner is now a bright yellow icon for save. And you can click on the bright yellow icon, and it will ask you if you really, really, really mean to make these saves. And you say, yes, please. So you click on the green save. And you should just briefly get a green label that flashes up and says layers saved, and then it disappears again. If it comes up with anything else, it'll be red. And the usual reason is that there's been some sort of data glitch between you and the internet, and just doing it again will make the problem go away. But no one's shouting at me, so I'm assuming you're all happy. So move up to the top right corner, click on the icon of the globe, which is the middle one that takes you back to the maps. And so now if you come back to my screen in Zoom, I'm just summarizing where we've got to so far. So we've created a new layer in your parish layers, and we've called it Your Name and Test. We created three columns that we wanted, and we configured the status column to have allowed values. We configured the name column to be a required data, and you'll see why in a second. Excuse me, just need to take a quick drink. And we've saved the new layer and clicked on the globe to come back to maps. So that is the structure. A layer is a structure that you're going to save data in. Now we need to create a data record to put the data in so that we have something to see. So to do that, on your map, find your test layer and right click anywhere in the brown layer or the beige layer, I beg its pardon. Beg your pardon. And you should get a mini menu popping up. And the second choice will be add feature, and just click on add feature. And you'll see now that your screen has changed slightly. You've got your main map on the right-hand side, as always, but on the left-hand side, there's an empty column. And it'll tell you at the top that you've got the test layer. You'll see that the name column is in red. So you're going to have to put something in there. And then the date and the status are optional. So what you want to do now is to, before we do anything else, is just change the right-hand main map to give you a space where we're going to put this cricket pavilion or whatever it is that we're going to add in our case, your case. Just find a nice convenient space. You know, I'm going to choose our local recreation ground. You may find that that's the best place for you if you've got one, or an open field, or a park. Doesn't matter, just for today's exercise. But I just want you to get to an open space where you can see what you're doing, and you need to zoom in a bit to give you a bit more space. So if you look at my screen, you'll see that this is what I've done. So I've gone to our recreation ground. The left-hand column is still waiting for me to put data entry into it, and it's now your turn. So complete the 3 entry boxes in the left-hand column, please. Give it a name, call it whichever you like, but, you know, Sarah's Pavilion or Test Pavilion or Gobbledygook, doesn't matter what you call it. Give it today's date just by clicking in the date field, and then click on the status. And you'll see that it pops up with 3 allowed values, and just select one of them. I'm suggesting you call it not yet started, but it's entirely up to you. The point is the principle of the thing. So you should end up with a record that looks the way I've got it on my screen if you happen to come back to there. But basically, all 3 data fields are now completed. You'll notice that the Save button down the bottom left corner is still grayed out, i.e. you can't use it yet. And that's because we haven't actually put anything on the map. If you move your mouse now over the map, you'll see it changes to a crosshairs. And what you want to do is to imagine you're going to draw the outline of a building. So just put your mouse in, let's say, where you're going to put the top left corner of your building, and click once. And then just draw the mouse along, and you'll see that it drags a straight blue line behind you. Get to the point where you reach the next corner of the building, click once again and change direction. And then you can just draw the map around, click again, change direction, and then go back to the starting point. And when you get to the starting point, do a double click, which means that you've finished. You should end up with a shape now on your screen that is outlined in blue. And you should also see that the Save button at the bottom left has become solid. You can now click on that. So please do go ahead and save it. So click on Save, and you will see, having clicked on Save, that the building you've drawn should now be a glorious deep red. Very easy to see. In the left-hand column, the feature editor has created a new blank record for you. Now, this is in the expectation that when you're putting in new data, you want to be doing several items at once. And so it's very convenient. It gives you a nice new record to complete. But in our case, we've done the record we're going to do. So click on the X at the top of the feature editor column just to close that down. And then you'll see you've gone back to the columns of layers in the left-hand side. Your column should be highlighted with a tick. And in the map, your building should be outlined in red. Now, what we're going to do now is just practice making edits to that to change it. And there are several ways of doing this. Not ways, but reasons for doing this. So if you click anywhere in your red building, your left column will change to the data record, and your building should now be outlined in blue again, just to show that the record on the left is now referring to your building on the right. To make changes, you're going to click on the pencil at the top of the left column. So that's your editing pencil. And by the way, if you didn't like what you called this in the name field, or you didn't like today's date or something, this is where you can just change it. So having clicked on the pencil, you can change any of the data in the fields in the left column. But what we really want to do is just practice straightening up your building. Maybe your corners are not proper right angles, or you'd like to make the shape a bit more complicated, or you haven't put it just where you wanted it. You want to know how to move it. So that's what we're going to do now. So what I'm suggesting to everybody, and when they create new shapes in Parish Online, I suggest do it rough and ready to begin with. It's very much easier to straighten it out at this point. And it's even easier still if you zoom in a bit. So what I'm going to do on my copy is zoom right in so that we get a much bigger copy of the building that we're going to play with. So I'm zooming in, and you'll see that we have got a much bigger picture. And you'll notice that you can create a blue dot anywhere on your line of the building just by moving your mouse there. But if you click on the blue dot and pull it, you can adjust it to any shape that you like. So you can have all sorts of weird triangles, or you can do corners, but you can move the entire building just by moving one wall, and then the rest will follow as you pull it all across. So hopefully you're all getting the chance to practice just moving things about. What I've done for my diagram for you guys to see is just I've aligned the building more closely with the edge of the boundary edge of the sports field. So it's much easier to line things up when you're on a large scale like this. The bigger the scale, the easier it is to get more accurate. So if precision is important to you, which it won't be today, but in the future, do it at a large scale. It's much, much simpler. So when you've got the shape that you want and you like everything else, then just click on Save again. And then I promised to show you how you can add an attachment, because records are much more useful if they're full of data. So your attachment can be anything. It can be a photograph, it can be a Word document, it can be a spreadsheet, it can be a picture of an inspection report, it can be the inspection report itself. All these things are available to put onto attachments to your record. So for today, I'm going to assume you've got something somewhere on your computer that you can add to this picture of a building. So what you want to do is to go to the plus sign opposite the attachments and click on it, and then click on the word Add Attachment. And nothing will happen, or rather, sorry, it'll go to ask you what do you want to add, and just select anything. If you've got a spare photograph of yourself, or a photograph of your dog, or a picture of the house, or a copy of a Word document, just add it here for the attachment. This is just an exercise for making it work. And you'll see that it appears that nothing is happening. And that's because you're uploading this document to the cloud, and depending upon your broadband connection, it can take a few seconds. So something is happening, and eventually it might have happened already, or it might still be about to happen. It'll pop back up with the little icon to show that your attachment is in place. And so I've got one now where I've got a picture of a footbridge. And then if you wanted to actually check the attachment, you can click on the green cloud, and it'll download either to a directory on your computer, or depending on how your browser is set up, it may just open it up and show it to you. So we're at the point now where if you wanted to, you can delete this feature by clicking on the dustbin, which is the middle icon in the top of the feature editor. So that's how you get rid of a record. We've shown you how you edit it by clicking on the pencil icon, and that should be more or less the exercise complete for today. I'm just going to do a couple of things at my end. So if you can come back to my screen, we'll just do a couple more items to talk about, and then we'll go to a Q&A session. So the second layer underneath parish layers is called the asset register, and it's a slight hybrid. So you cannot change the structure of the asset register, But on the other hand, it is a place for you to put all of the details that you need to keep about your parish assets. So the columns of data that are in there are all those that have been shown to be necessary for any well-run council, which particularly means insurance requirements. So you'll notice that it asks you to put in the date that you got the product, how much it cost, what it's worth now, what it's going to cost to replace, how often you inspect it, that sort of thing. So you can't change the questions that it asks you, but what you can do is start putting data in there. So you're gradually moving your asset register from wherever it is at the moment, which is often just a spreadsheet, and putting it onto your system. Now, the only people who can see what you've put in your parish layers or your asset register are people who are using your parish online account. So people in nearby parishes or people up at the national level or the county level, they cannot see the data that you've put into your parish layers or your asset register. It's just for you to look at. There is a separate training session devoted to asset registers, so I'm not doing more than just mentioning it to you here as sort of one of those weird layers where you can't change it, but you can add records to it, which is unlike any of the other layers besides the parish layer. The menu headings across the top of Parish Online, again, they're a case study or a training session on their own. But if you do want to find out what they mean and how they do it, then I've got a link in this presentation that takes you to a place on the user groups website where they explain what every menu item does in Parish Online. And this is where I emphasize to you that the knowledge base in Parish Online, which is the cogwheel in the top right, click on that and select help and support, is a really good way of finding out how to use the system. They've changed the knowledge base recently. They've gone to a completely different system and they're rewriting a lot of it. And the rewrites are first class. So the knowledge base contains videos, shows you how to do things, and it includes fairly broad step-by-step instructions of what to do. And then if you have any requirements for more help, we can show you where to get that. So I'm now finished with the formal presentation to you. I'm going to close off the screen, or rather stop the screen sharing so I can come back and see you. Make sure that everyone's still smiling. Golly, they are. So we're all right. Did we manage to complete our building? Yes, all right. Nods from Rosamund. That's good.
I'm afraid we were following you. We'll have a go at it later when we've don't feel we've got to keep up. Yeah, it's like that, isn't it? I agree. So that was the whole point of them having everything ready to send out to you, because lots of people do want to go through it in slow time afterwards. It seems to work very well. Hello to Charlotte, who we've not seen yet, but you've obviously popped in at some point of the day. I'm sorry that I wasn't aware that you were there. Now then, David, Sarah, Ramoon, it's time for you to ask any questions that you've got.
I just say thank you. That's been useful, pointing us in the right direction. We need to go away and play.
Yes, well, that's exactly the right attitude, David. That's really good. Yeah.
Could you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your involvement with Parish Online? Were you involved in the development, or are you simply a very knowledgeable user that does training sessions?
I have nothing whatsoever to do with this development, but many years ago in a previous lifetime, I was in the Royal Navy, and one of my chums from there started Parish Online about a dozen years ago. And when I became a parish councillor here in Somerset, I remembered that he had something to do with digital mapping for parishes. So I got back in touch and said, so what is all this nonsense anyway? And I was fascinated. I have to tell you, Sarah, that I spent 35 years in IT and I've seen every sort of program you can imagine. And this is one of the sweetest. I think it's a great little program. It's very powerful. It's remarkably inexpensive, and it can do almost anything you want to do. And, I've seen parish councils around here are using it to run their entire parish council meetings. They do everything inside Parish Online. So they show the agenda, they show the minutes of the last meeting. They show people say, why has that notice board fallen down by the bus stop? And you can take them to the notice board and the bus stop and show it to them and say, is this what you mean? And that removes all sort of doubt about who's talking about what. You don't get to the end of an hour's discussion and find that the person at the left-hand end of the table was talking about somewhere that's 450 yards away from where everyone else was talking about. It's a great system. So I started, there was no user group, and I found, again, in years of IT applications, that user groups are really, really helpful things to have, because the people who produce the product don't necessarily use it in quite the same way that the people are using it. And the people who are using it say, well, actually, you say do it this way, but we've actually found it's much more convenient to do it that way. And user groups set up all sorts of things, and then they can become forces for good and for evil, but they can haunt the manufacturer by saying, are you aware that 50 of your users are fed up with this, and can't you change it? And they'll say, God, we never realized, or whatever it happens to be. But on the other side of that is that what I found is that everybody is desperate for more data from their administrative authority. They want the planning applications to come to them in their maps. They want the footpath information that's held at county level. And when you talk to the county people, they have no idea what you're talking about. And I discovered that it's a matter of education. In Somerset, we found that as soon as we found the right person to talk to, and he said, oh, yes, and they'll then say something like, well, we had no idea that you wanted that stuff. And then you say, well, are you aware, and this is the key bit, this is where you latch into this, right? Are you aware that the people at Parish Online will do all the work involved in getting the data from your system into their system? Amazingly, it actually only takes a minute or two. So all that footpath information, and I don't know if you've ever seen any of it, but there's literally hundreds of thousands of footpaths, and doing it yourself would take forever. And in 30 seconds, you can have the whole lot available to you. And let me just go back and show you in case you've not spotted it in your own system. So if I go into my copy of Parish Online, which is over here somewhere, and I probably need to start it up. So let's do that. So let's start up Parish Online. So each county or each parish is given the layers of data that their particular county has started exporting to Parish Online. So if I go down here, I can see something that says Somerset County Council. So you guys are in somewhere weird like Cheshire or Remoon, you're in Huntingdonshire, right? Is it still called Huntingdonshire? It keeps changing, but yes. Okay, so you may or may not find anything here. Depends on what Cheshire County Council or Huntingdon County Council is doing and whether they've been approached by anybody. But if I click on this layer, then I get something called public rights of way. Yeah. And this is really useful because they all come up. And then as I zoom in and get more detail, you'll see that we start getting identity numbers on every single footpath. And like everything else, if you click on the footpath, then the information pops up over here. And so now you've got information that you can talk to the people at county level, and they say, look, you've got this footpath going from here to here, but it doesn't, it goes from here down to here. Why don't we change it? Or whatever, you know. If you zoom out a little, you can see how many paths we're talking about. The place is absolutely littered in footpaths, and putting them in yourself would take forever, but someone's already done it. So if you don't have this public rights of way from your county council at the moment, then you come along to the user group, and you say, can you help us get this information out of our county council? And one of the things I've been doing over the last 3 years is working out ways of doing just that. And it turns out that the one thing you want to really steer 100 miles away from is anything called the IT department or the GIS department. All right. They're the last people to talk to get information about IT or GIS from. What you're looking for is someone who's got a title like Chief Customer Service Officer or Director of Service Provision or something. And he's got the job, or it may be a she, and in fact, in our case, it is a she, of making sure that the council is providing the information to its users. And the councils tend to forget that parishes are users and we have rights, and they're obliged to share their public information with us. And either they never knew that or they've completely forgotten it. But once the point is made, we found in Somerset, they couldn't stop falling over themselves to help. They were wonderful. They did a complete 180-degree U-turn. Okay, so when we started calling IT, there was just no one ever answered the phone, no one answered ever emails, nothing ever happened. As soon as we got on to the client service people, they pulled all the right levers and away we went. And it was magic, it really was. So we're now getting not only the layers of information from the county council, next one down, we've got our local district council as well. And they're providing all sorts of useful layers. And the one they keep promising us, and I keep hoping to see, is planning applications, because your local district council is your local planning authority. And they have all the data that you need. So let me just turn this layer off because it's getting in the way. Footpaths, here we go. There we go. So user group is there to help you get data out of your district authority or your council or your unitary. So let me talk about going from the sublime to the ridiculous. Okay, there is a unitary in northern Somerset, which we call BANES, which stands for Bath and Northeast Somerset. And they have their GIS department run by a very smart cookie indeed. And about 10 years ago, he discovered that he had lots of people in his GIS department just picking up the ringing phone, and the parish clerk from such and such a Nowhereville in Sandsland would say, "May I please have a copy of a grid bin layout," or something like that. And they'd have to produce this map and send it off to the parish council. And what they worked out in BANES was that, why don't we buy a license for Parish Online for every council in our unitary? In their case, it's about 300 of them. And they will all have a digital mapping system, and they can all do their own bloody question and answer session. And they can produce their own maps. And it was a no-brainer. It was extraordinary. They found the money they saved by not having to pay people to just sit there and answer the telephone was more than the cost of the licenses for Parish Online. So it made no sense to them to do it any other way. And as proof of the pudding, they've done it for the last 10 years. And even more fascinating is that they now produce every day 400 layers of data to Parish Online. So if you're in the BANES unitary area, there are 400 lines of information that you're getting from your local authority. So that's all the footpaths, all the grit bins, all the salting routes, all the planning applications, all the cemetery information, everything you knew that you wanted, and a whole ton of stuff you had no idea that you wanted until they told you it was there. And so it's magic. So what I've been working on is how can you get your local authorities to work more closely with you? And the big essence for you to take away with today is that it doesn't cost them anything. Parish Online will do it for them. And that is usually music to the ears of any IT department. And they say, well, of course, if you're going to do the work, we'd be delighted to help you. And it becomes a piece of cake, and it makes so much difference to you. I mean, the workload lifted from the shoulders of the parish clerk is mind-boggling. And that all this data is just sitting there, and you've got people who don't realize that A, they've got it, and B, that you want it. It's just a matter of putting the two together. and it's working a treat. So my mission in life at the moment is to make sure that parishes are swimming in far more data than they ever wanted, because that's much better than having far less data than they could deal with. And Charles, I'm very sorry, you very kindly sent a little note, and I didn't see what it said. It says you joined a little later, so I'm sorry. Well, I hope you caught off on it. But what you did miss was my saying at the start, you will get a copy of the video and you will get a copy of the presentation, so you can go through all of this in your own time. Anybody else got any questions? They want to see anything? Now's the time. It doesn't have to be necessarily on what we've covered today. It can be on something new. Let me tell you about a couple of other things. I do send out to you with the video and the presentation a little document that says, here are the places to go to for interesting things. And one of them is the banter group. So every Friday afternoon between 3 and 4 o'clock, the usual suspects get together in a Zoom session, and they're just sitting there waiting for anybody to call. So they are all themselves parish councillors or parish clerks. They've all got years of experience of parish online, and they're all thinking, all those poor little devils out there across the country just waiting for us to help them. And we don't know where they are, and they don't know where we are. So get together on Friday afternoons. There's one tomorrow, guess what? 3 o'clock tomorrow, anytime. And it's designed for drop-in, right? You just drop in, you say, can you please answer this? Thank you very much. I had no idea you'd be so helpful. Goodbye. And it's done. And you've made their day. They're delighted to have been of help. And it's made your day because you're delighted to have had the problem that's been bugging you for the last 6 weeks fixed in 30 seconds. And now you're left to cope with the fact that, how could I have been so stupid not to see that in 30 seconds? But there you go. So it's all going to come out to you in the email when I send out the video. It'll take a little time because Zoom takes a while to get the video ready. And then I usually have to trim the first 10 minutes off because it's nonsense. But you'll get it all within the next 24 hours. In fact, if you go to, this is a very complicated web address, so you'll want to write this down, okay? It's all one word, parishonlineusergroup.com. See how complicated that is? And then if you go there, that A, shows you how to get in touch with the banter sessions on Friday, and B, it's full of all sorts of useful tips of how to make the most out of Parish Online, and C, it's brilliant because most of it I wrote. But there are some really useful bits. So people sometimes complain to me that the problem with the videos that Parish Online produce is that they're too long. On the website, sorry, on the user group website, we've got videos that are 1 minute long. So they're brilliant at just showing you the principles of how to do things. Because they're tied to Somerset, they'll be showing you stuff that may be of no interest to you whatsoever, but it's the principle that you want to learn about. And they're very good. It's a husband and wife team, not me and not my wife, I hasten to add, who put these together. Really good. In fact, he's one of the usual suspects. But, so if you come along tomorrow afternoon, you'll meet Malcolm. But he and his wife are just, it's a great piece of teamwork putting together these videos. And they're only 40 seconds, 60 seconds long. Great. Okay, no one else got any questions?
So just a quick one, please. So I found Cambridgeshire County Council and Public Rights of Way, but I didn't find Huntingdonshire District Council with their grass cutting areas. How do I ask them to upload or share with me? Please.
Here's an address you do want to write down. So there's an address called support@geosphere.com. Do you know them?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Okay. All you need to do is to copy them on the email that you write to Huntingdonshire, and they'll take it from there for you.
Right.
All right. So what you want to do is to find the person in Huntingdonshire County Council whose job is, public service director or client service director, or any problems you have, call here director, whatever his name is, and say, we'd like you to share all sorts of layers of data with Parish Online. Please talk to support. And it doesn't cost you anything.
Thank you.
So all this is in that document, which I'm going to send out with the email.
Oh, lovely.
But well, you won't know that until we talked about it. Charlotte, you got any questions? You're all right down there? I say down there, where are you? I don't even know where you are. Oh, yes, you're in Newmarket. No, Charlotte, sorry. I don't know where you are. You're just a parish clerk at BT Connect. Where are you, Charlotte? Yes, we all got lots. There are lots of other training sessions if you're happy to come along to them, Charlotte. West Sussex. Oh, well, you are in luck because West Sussex is one of those unitaries that does work very closely with Parish Online. You've got lots of data layers there to play with. Balcombe, right. Okay, well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. If there's nothing else, I'll say goodbye and I'll send you out all the details. Take care. It's been lovely to see you. See you
Thank
next
you very
time.
much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.